Hi guys, it's Jordan from P&P Campers. Just going to do your handover video on this Wellhouse Terrier. So it's a 2015 model based on the Ford Transit. So under the bonnet here, we've got your washer fluid over on this left-hand side. Brake fluid is actually in this little reservoir here at the front, but it does attach to a overflow and the servo for that. Power steering fluid is in this reservoir just here. The air filter itself sits underneath this cover here, so you've just got these clips to take out to get that out, so that's nice and easy if you should ever need to. The oil or engine oil dipstick is the yellow topped one just down there, and the actual oil filling point is just down there on the top of the engine. The engine coolant is over here in this right hand reservoir, and you can see the engine's cold at the moment, and the level there is just between the minimum and maximum line. So because the engine battery in these sits under the floor in the cab, you've got a positive terminal just here under this little red cover, and it should tell you whereabouts to do the earthing. And so there'll be a little engine hoist down there somewhere, just here. So this little engine hoist here is where they want you to earth for jump starting. So if you needed to jump start the van, you've got your positive terminal here and your earthing or your negative terminal on the hoist. So that makes it a lot easier. Rather than having to take things out inside, you can just jump start it from underneath. To actually get the bonnet open, you need to use the key, just like most Transits. Key physically goes in this little slot here, and then you turn it once to the left and then once to the right, and that will then open it up. If we carry on to the near side, just inside the passenger door, the only thing I'm going to point out to you in here is, because you've got an Eberspatcher diesel heater, you've got the air inlet point just here inside the passenger door. So you do have to make sure that you don't cover that with anything, because if you do, the diesel heater will not be able to draw enough air in to work. So just bear that in mind. Got a cup holder here on the left hand side, and absolutely tons of storage in front of you. I will also point out that the fuse box, you've got two of them, but you've got one down here on the front of the passenger seat, because the leisure battery sits under the passenger seat, and you've got another one in this sliding locker just here, another fuse box. So your diesel filling point is just inside this little flap here as well. You will need to have the door open in order to open this up, because you've got this little cover here which stops it from being able to be opened. The electric step comes out from this little switch just here, and this little cover here, this is the diesel heating outlet point. So if you do have the heating on, that's where it will come out from, just there. So you've got the colour matched wind out awning on the side as well. I have had that out as part of the habitation check, lubricated all of the little bits and pieces that need doing, and it all worked really nicely. So towards the back, there's not a huge amount to run through. I will run through the gas with you, but as for the actual back of the van, you've got the tow bar down here with the electrics, and you have got the pull across curtains there as well. So the gas locker is relatively straightforward. I have had to replace the pigtail hose that you've got in here, so that's this hose that comes off the bottle. So that's 2023, so you've got till about 28 to replace that. Before we carry on onto the actual gas side of things, I will just point something out. So in this locker, so this might sound really strange, but we only found this out the other day. To get these lights out on these Transits, they've got, just in here somewhere, behind here, they've got a plastic nut. So you've got these screws on the front, which you might think would just allow you to take it out, but it won't. So there is a plastic nut that you have to get your hand into and loosen off just on the back of it. So that is why they have given you this little cover here inside the gas locker, so that you can reach your hand in and unscrew that bolt. It's really awkward to get to, but at least it gives you access to it. Just in case you ever wondered why that was there, that is why. on the other side, you can probably get to it from this little cover here. So it's a lot easier. But anyway, so the gas itself, so you've got space in here for a 6 kilo propane bottle, which is what you've got in here at the moment. So on the top of the bottle, you've got a screw top. So to turn it on, we go anti-clockwise around to the left. So that's turned the gas on. And you go clockwise around to the right, all the way to turn it off. You've got a bulkhead Truma regulator here, which regulates it at 30 millibars of pressure. And the only other thing you need to know really is that this point here is for our gas test. All right, so you don't have to worry about that at all. That's all that is. So make sure you turn the gas off before you start driving. That is essential. But otherwise, just the only thing you need to know really is that you take this nut off from here on the gas bottle. You can buy specific spanners to help you do that. And when you want to replace it for a new bottle, you just undo the strap here, put the new nut on, nip it up, and you're good to go. So you then got the hookup point here on the offside. So the hookup gives you access to using any 3-point plug sockets inside the van. It turns the 240 volt charger on, and then that means that you basically don't have to worry about your leisure battery voltage because it's constantly being charged up. But as you know, other than that, the hookup doesn't do a huge amount on this vehicle. But the main thing really is, especially because you've got a diesel heater, it is quite important. If you're going to run the diesel heating a lot, really you're going to need the hookup plugged in, just because of the amount of power that the diesel heating requires. So down low on the offside, we've got the waste tank just here. So the one towards the back, the grey handle, is your waste drain off point. And further towards the front is your fresh tank, and that's the one with the blue handle, or drain off point should I say. So fresh and waste water tanks down there, and the last thing to show you on the outside is this, which is your freshwater filling point, which is quite cleverly put inside the cab here. So that is where you fill up your fresh tank from. Don't worry about getting all this section wet. I mean, you can see that I have, as part of the habitation check, they put this here, they put this inlet here because this all can get wet. It doesn't matter. So yeah, don't worry about that at all if it does get wet. So that's your freshwater filling point in there. So in the cab, you've got a really nice high spec in the cab. So you've got the 6-speed manual gearbox. You've got the large sized center console, so you've got CD, radio, auxiliary, everything really. You've got heated windscreen from this little switch just here. You've got the start stop button and your parking sensors on and off. You've then got on the steering wheel all sorts of bits and pieces really. So you've got these ones here on the tops where your thumbs would be. That's to go through and change things on the actual stereo and on the screen up here. But lower down, you've got this section on the left hand side is all to do with your cruise control. So you can turn the actual cruise control on and off from pressing it on here. You can cancel it by pulling up towards you, and you can set the speed like that. You can also use it as a limiter if you want to. Less used really, but the cruise control is from there. And all of this stuff on the right hand side is all to do with, if you've got your phone linked up to it, you can answer and decline phone calls from there via sort of like the hands-free system. You've got air conditioning from the little switch just there, a 12-volt socket next door to that, and all of your heater controls just there in the middle as well. Lights are all from this little section down here. So you've got your side lights, main beam, and automatic, so you can leave it in auto mode if you want to. You've got the brightness of the center console, so you can change the brightness of the screen, the dash basically from there, and your front and rear fog lamps. You have also got the fold-in mirrors from here, so you push up or push down, whichever way, and they'll fold in on you, and you can adjust them however you want to from there as well. Okay, so if I jump inside now, I would just point out as well, not that you probably need to know about it, but these two green things just here at the front are both to do with your air conditioning, and this sticker is telling you the gas that it needs to go in, or that needs to go in it, and how much of it as well. It will tell you on there the amount of kilos there. So if you ever needed to get that done, that's where the details are for that. Okay, so the van itself is in fantastic condition. I mean, like I said, I've just done the habitation check, and the only thing that there was that I found wrong with it was the pump was playing up a little bit, but it was only because there was a bit of a kink underneath on the inlet hose, so I've replaced the little section of hose that was kinked. Other than that, you know, it was really, really good. So I have fitted a new leisure battery to it, because the old one was a little bit, you know, it wasn't terrible, but, you know, not quite good enough for such a nice new van. I thought to save us getting any phone calls in the future, we might as well put a new battery in there. So that's been done. So the first thing I'm going to run you through is the control panel, which is this, sorry, moving around a lot, control panel up here. So this essentially controls everything that's working from the electrics, anything 12 volt. So you've got the main master switch up here. So if I turn this on and off, absolutely everything that works from the 12 volt or from the leisure battery, that is, will be switched off. You've then got just here a little button that says volts on it. Press and hold on that, and it will come up here telling you the voltage in the leisure battery. So 12 volts at the moment, that is absolutely perfect. The battery voltages that you're going to be looking for is, if you're not hooked up on the mains, anything above 10 volts is okay. When you start getting down towards 10 volts, you need to get your hookup plugged in, because that's going to start to, you know, it'll end up ruining the battery basically. But if you're hooked up on the mains, anywhere between 13 and 14 volts is always good as well. But yeah, otherwise around sort of 12 volts is an absolutely perfect resting battery voltage. Underneath those two switches, you've got auxiliary, so anything that might be wired up to an external auxiliary point, water pump, and then you've got your 4 lights switches here. Okay, so lights, as I said, you know, you just go through and select which ones you might want. You know, so you might not want all of them on all the time, but that's up to you. Underneath that, we've got your diesel heating section here. So the e-Dispatcher diesel heaters are, in my opinion, the best ones. You've got e-Dispatcher, Webasto. There are a couple of other companies that do them, but I find these to be the most reliable. So first things first, the diesel heater will not work if you get below about 1/4 of a tank of diesel. Okay, so that's your diesel tank, the actual Ford normal diesel tank that you run from. It draws its diesel from that. But if you imagine that this thing here is your fuel tank, the diesel heaters tend to get tapped into about this high, so that you can't drain it all the way out to the very bottom with this, in order to, you know, so that you can always start the engine up and drive off. You know, so if they put the point on the bottom of the tank, you could just drain all the diesel out of it using this heater, and then not be able to start up and drive. So they always go in about 1/4 of the way up. So if you don't have any fuel in the tank whatsoever, or you're literally like about to run out of fuel, don't expect the diesel heater to work, because it more than likely won't. All right. So to actually use the diesel heater, first of all, you've got on the left hand side this switch just here, which brings up a blue light, and that is the fan only. Okay, so straight away fan kicks in, and that is all it's doing. It's just blowing cool air. So that's what the blue light does. If you want the heating to start coming on and start working, you press the switch on the top right hand side, you'll then get a green light. Okay, you then need to select your temperature. So when I click on either of these, it's telling us the temperature that the diesel heater is trying to reach. So it's trying to get to 26. I can change that by pressing and holding there. I can get it to reach 30 if I wanted to, or I could go for something a bit more realistic and keep it on, say, 22. All right, so now what will happen is the diesel heater will light up. You'll start hearing a very slight ticking noise outside, which is just the diesel running through the pump. And what will happen is you've got a little thermostat just here. It'll start heating up and pumping out through that vent. And when the thermostat reaches 22, it'll turn itself off. When it dips down again, it'll come back on. So you really can just leave it alone if you want to. You can, just like a house, you can set it to whatever you want and leave it alone. But as I was saying, it is really important to keep your eye on this voltage here, just because the diesel heaters do use a lot of power to get going. But yeah, it's just worth keeping your eye on that. Okay, so I don't actually want the heating to be on right now. It's, you know, it's not particularly cold, so I'm just going to turn that off. All right, the fan will run on for a little while once you've turned it off, just to cool itself down basically. But that's all that's doing there. Below that, we've got a 12-volt socket in here and a 240-volt socket here. So this one will only work when the hookup's plugged in. Storage over the appliances down here, and this one as well. I have put the shelves back up in here, done them as nicely as I could, put some little wooden dowels in so that they sit on there nice and strong. So that's where they are, nicely fitted in there. So in this lower cupboard here, we've got your 240-volt trip switches. So that's what those are there. So if you do have the hookup plugged in, if you find that nothing's working, it's worth sticking your head in there and making sure that these are all in the upright position. And we've got that secondary fuse panel that I was talking about. So if you ever get into any trouble where you can't get something to work on the 12-volt, it's probably worth looking in here as well as the one down there in front of the battery. This one just here is just storage and a little bit of access to the bottom of this sink, so you can get to that freshwater fitting. And then down low here, we've got the access to the Portaloo in there. Okay, so these are particularly standard units. So these are both, I think they're Dometic. Yeah, Dometic units here. So you've got the 2-burner hob up here and the sink. So I'm going to turn the pump switch on now, and that will then give us water coming through to the tap. Once you've turned it off, I always find it to be, I always say this, doesn't matter what van it is, it's always a good idea to turn the pump switch off when you're finished with it. Okay, now really the pump should switch itself off when you turn this tap off. That's all well and good. You know, sometimes they run on for a little bit longer than others, sometimes they run on all the time, purely just down to pressure. But if for whatever reason the pump runs on without you even hearing it, because some of them are so quiet that you might not even know it's on, if you don't switch that switch off there, you're never going to know it. If it does run on, what will happen is it'll burn out and you just have to get a new one. So it's always a good idea to do that. Plus, I will point out that at some point in this vehicle's life, it has had the original Whale pump switched out for a Flowjet pump. Okay, so that is why you've got the little light here that says pump run. All right, so basically what that means is down by the pump, because I have had that all out to get the that pipe thing sorted, the pump that's in it now doesn't have a signal wire going down to it from the control panel, whereas the original one, the Whale one that it would have had a little white wire going down to it, which tells the control panel when it's actually running. So that is why you don't have this light coming on and off all the time. Okay, so that's why it's even more important for you to switch that switch off when you're finished with the tap, because there's no way of knowing really, unless you physically lift this cupboard up and reach in and grab it. There's no way of knowing. So enough rambling on about that. So you've then got the 2-burner hob. Pretty simple. As long as you've got the gas switched on, you should be able to light either of these two up using the piezo igniter. Right, it's just gone out to my test. There you go. So yeah, these piezo igniters are a little bit noisy, but you know, these are all the same really. Very rarely will you find one with an electronic ignition. So a nice pull-out drawer down here, a bit more storage. For a small van, I must admit, there is plenty of storage in here. Yeah. So you've then got the Dometic 12-volt fridge. So the fridge itself, you turn it on from this little dial at the back. So turn that on from there, and the fridge will then immediately start cooling down. So simple as that with the fridge. The fridge will continue to run even if you start and run the engine and drive. So that will run all the time that you want it to, and keep everything cold whilst you're driving or whilst you're just parked up. I'm going to turn that off for now. So to switch it off, you do have to make sure that you go right the way up to the top. It kind of clicks over, but if you don't click it over like that, then it won't be completely off. Right, the only other thing I'm going to point out to you for now is this funny sort of handbrake. So all of these Wellhouses, and in fact pretty much every decent small motorhome brand, will fit one of these weird handbrakes. They do take a little bit of getting used to, but if you haven't used one before, you might not understand how they work. So at the moment, it looks like the handbrake isn't doing anything and that it's not set, but it absolutely is set because we're not rolling around anywhere. So the reason they do that is so that you can still spin the seat around without having to let the handbrake off. Okay, so currently the handbrake is set, but the actual handle is down so that you can spin the seat. So to allow the handbrake to come off, lift the handle up until it stops and then release it just like any other normal handbrake. Once you've released it like normal, put the handle down and that's then released. Okay, so let me just see if I can show you. See if we roll away. No. So that's now released. So I lifted it up, I pressed the button in and I pushed it down just like a normal handbrake. Now I can set the handbrake and let go of it and it folds down. The handbrake is still set, but I've just pushed the handle away. So that's how those work. Right, the roof is in really good condition. The actual fabric is in really nice condition. You have got these little reading lights here, which turn on and off just by twisting. And of course, the bed comes down nice and easily as well. So you've got the light up there. This ladder up here is to help you get up to this overcab bed as well, or over the top bed. And I will point out that this is one of the highest roofs I've ever seen in my life. So this must have been the higher roof option from factory. So all nice things to have. Because some of the roofs, I must admit, some of them are a bit like, you know, sort of like laying in a coffin, if you like. And when you're laying up here, it can be a little bit sort of close to your head. But actually this one's very, very high up, so that's a really, really good thing to have. So I'll just push that back away and then I'll go up on the gas struts and there you go. Carpet for the van is in here as well, and I think the last thing I'm going to show you is just how to use the bed. So couldn't be any easier. These are the older rails to the ones that you get nowadays, but I think this one's, if anything, it's even easier. So to actually get the bed to move, you lift up on this handle and pull the whole thing to any of these little circular rungs. All right, so it will lock back in place. Super strong. It's not, you know, that's not going anywhere. And you've still got your 3 seat belts over the top there. The base of the Let me just chuck this out of the way so I can lift this over. 1 second. So the seat just here, let me just show you what I did actually. So the seat here, you lift up from the front and towards you. It will then fold over like that. You've then got these handles here to pull the back, or this little piece down flat, and then you push the end part down. So you go to put it back away, fold this all the way over and back in, and that's it. Could not be any easier than that. Takes them all of about, I don't know, 30 seconds to make the bed up. So there you go. So I think I've pretty much covered everything. If there is anything you think I've missed out or anything you'd like going over again, just let us know. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much.